First of all, congratulations on your 31st year anniversary as the pastor of Eastern Star Baptist Church and your 40th year of ministry.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
The church has made a momentous decision to gift you on this, your 31st anniversary and 40th year in ministry, a gift of a 6-month sabbatical. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm glad they're at least sensitive to what it takes to pastor and minister and share the gospel and to figure out something uniquely special to my wife and I and our family on what they could do to help celebrate something as significant as 40 years of ministry and 31 years of pastoring. So it speaks a lot to the kind of leadership that is here to be open to do something like this.
I've seen a lot of anniversary gifts. I've seen material, a check. I've seen trips. I've seen all kind of gifts. This is rare and unusual, and so I want to, with you, celebrate the congregation of Eastern Star Baptist Church. And so would you say a little bit about to the congregation of how that sabbatical in terms of time might look?
Yeah, in the scriptures it opens up in Genesis chapter 1 where God worked 6 days and then rested on the 7th day. Yes. And then right after that he created humanity, men and women, after his own image and in his own likeness. So if we're lining up with the image of God, if God needed to rest on a day, then certainly there needs to be a time for rest for us. And when Moses came down with the 10 Commandments from Mount Sinai to pour into these people of faith, what a faith community looks like, there ought to be a time of Sabbath, to remember the Sabbath, to keep it holy. And there ought to be some time of rest. And then throughout the scripture, the Bible just keep talking about rest. When Jesus would get apart and Moses would get apart, and 40 days of fasting for Jesus and 40 days in the mountain for Moses. And you've come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. Jesus said, I'll give you rest. The psalmist said, he makes me to lie down. And so when we don't have enough sense to lie down on our own, he makes us to lie down. So the rest is there. The Sabbath is biblical. And so to have a congregation that at least it has some awareness of the necessity of that for the leadership of the ministry is significant.
Why would you say this gift is so special in your 31st year and your 40th year of ministry?
This is not the first time Eastern Star Church has talked to me about a sabbatical. We've had those kind of conversations in the past. I've always felt like it wasn't the right season. It wasn't the right time. There was always something going on that I felt I had to be here. And so this time, as we make these discussions, I was the one that prevented it from happening before. And so I guess I'm the one that's helping it happen now. Even though I could come up with a reason or an excuse not to do it now, because there's a lot going on. After 31 years of being here, for them to sense that and know that and the need for that, it means a lot, and it's a wonderful expression of gratitude for me and my wife for the sacrifice and service and the time that we've put in here. So I'm really looking forward to the process of making it happen, and I'm looking forward to the few days I'm gonna have off.
So how would you say that the sabbatical will benefit the church?
Well, I think one thing the sabbatical is going to do for the church is to see what I've done for 31 years. When Jesus in the Gospel of Luke was trying to explain to people the attitude of God towards the lost, the first thing he brings up, if there's a shepherd that has 100 sheep and one gets lost, and will he not leave the 99, go after the one? Until he finds him, brings him back. One minister, I wish I could remember his name, I don't. But he said, John Westbrook used to be in Houston. John Westbrook said the reason why the shepherd could leave the 99 and go after the one is because the 99 had enough maturity to stay together until the shepherd got back. So I'm hoping that 31 years of pouring into this congregation, of helping to develop leadership, that for me to have a sabbatical for 6 months, that they have enough spiritual maturity
Yes.
After 31 years of preaching and teaching and pouring into them, to be mature enough to stay together until the under shepherd gets back.
So what would you say to anybody that, that might say, for example, that you're going to leave, or, that you ain't coming back?
Well, for one thing, at some point I'm not coming back. So I'm going to retire or expire. Every pastor does.
Right.
But for a sabbatical, and Jesus said, learn from unrighteous mammon. So if we look in the business world, Fortune 500 companies, their CEOs and upper management, it's mandatory they take sabbaticals. We look in the medical field, doctors and administrators of hospitals, it's mandatory they take sabbaticals. So if we're going to learn from unrighteous mammon, then in the faith community, in the church, there needs to be sabbaticals. Now, our white counterparts, they've been doing this for years. This is a new phenomenon for black people.
Yes.
And so it's not about me trying to get away to stay away. It's for me trying to get apart before I fall apart.
Yes.
So that I can be restored.
Right.
And be able to come back stronger.
Exactly.
And continue the ministry that God's called me to here.
So it's really for renewed service that, you step back for a moment, hear from God, get fresh, relax, enjoy your family, do some spiritual pilgrimage, pray, read, do whatever you enjoy doing, and it reinforces the spiritual fervor in your life. So, you're already a terror right now. I only can imagine the terror you're going to be when you get back.
Well, I've never had a sabbatical, so I can't speak to that in the literal sense. But I've talked to people, including yourself and Claude Alexander and others, and Stacy Spencer out of Memphis and Ralph West and others who've had sabbaticals and just what it meant to them and what it meant to the ministry. So we're looking at best practices. What's the best way for us to do this? How can we accomplish this that the church benefits and is blessed, as well as myself and my wife and our family, that we don't want to take 6 months and don't get out of it what we're supposed to get out of it. And I come back and I'm worse off than before I left. So we're trying to learn from others who've done it and done it in a way that has been positive. And some have said, make sure you don't do this. Right. And as others said, make sure that this is taken care of in that.
One of the things that is really unique about this particular sabbatical here at Eastern Star is a plan to include at some level the staff. Many times sabbatical for the pastor, and so we're planning to include the staff. So can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've already spoken to our executive pastor and our chief of staff and our human resource people. I'm like, listen, we got to figure out some way that the staff is at least getting that Sabbath that God has modeled before us during this 6-month period, and the leadership here that we've accomplished so much, and really in such a short period of time. And so the sacrifices that have been made, the work that have gone into it, the service, and all the hours that the leadership here and the staff has poured into it, they need to step back too, and they need to take a break too, but just trying to figure out what does that look like for our staff and our leaders at this season of ministry. And we're still trying to hear God's voice with that and see what that's going to turn into.
One of the things that's also in your heart is that the congregation implements Sabbath. So God gave an idea about how one of the things that could be done such that the whole congregation could experience Sabbath as well. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I do. One of the two things I have not done well at this church for 31 years. I'll leave one out. Everybody can ask me individually what the other one. But one, I just have not dealt properly with the Sabbath. I like working, and I work all the time. My wife would tell you I'm a workaholic, and I get a lot out of work. Which, when God created humanity and he breathed into Adam the breath of life, and man became a living soul, and then he put him in the garden, and he started working. Unfortunately, men like me, if we're not careful, try to get our satisfaction and our status
Yes.
and our self-esteem from work rather than our relationship with God. And I don't, at least I don't think I do. I love Christ. I've accepted him into my heart. I believe I'm special because of my relationship with God through his son, Jesus Christ. But I gotta admit, I like working. I like the benefits of working. I like seeing the outcomes. I like the pay. I like what it's been able to do for my family and for our children and their education and provide for us. And I just have not taken the time to properly preach and teach what the Sabbath is all about. When I go around the country talking about church growth principles, I always talk about you got to preach it and teach it. And when you preach it and teach it, now their argument is not with you, it's with God, it's with his word. And they don't want to do that argument because he's got the power to cut that argument off at any time. But I have not preached and I have not taught about the Sabbath, what it means to keep it holy. What does that look like for the individual? What does it look like for the family?
Yeah.
Have I mentioned it? Yes. Have I said something about it? Yes. But I haven't done it the way I've done other principles that are necessary for making disciples. And in light of that, this is where we are now. And hopefully, as my wife and I figure out what that looks like for us, and the staff looks like, and the leaders look at what it means for them, hopefully members of the congregations as individuals in family, what does that look like when I have a day of rest, when I honor that Sabbath? And so I'll be preaching on it and teaching on it, and we'll bring in subject matter experts like we do with everything else, and hear God's voice and search the scriptures, and hopefully people will be open to what God is speaking and make up for the 31 years of failure of me doing that as we move towards that.
So I think what I hear is God speaking to you. So remember I asked you the question a little bit a while ago, but why 31 years? Why now? The idea's been presented to you before.
Correct.
But it feels like that you're really hearing God, not just for you, but for the staff and also for the entire congregation. Am I?
I mean, but for one thing, God speaks through situations and circumstances. I can't continue at this, I'm in my 50s. I ain't in my 20s no more. I told my church they had an issue with calling me because I was in my 20s.
Right.
The church had gone through a storm and bringing in a 24-year-old. So I had a lot of energy then. Now it's harder and harder climbing out of that bed in the morning, go down there and fight. So God speaks through situations and circumstances.
Yeah.
I need it. And the church has worked extremely hard through these years. It's the things we've been able to accomplish have not been by accident. It's been by intent, and it's been by the Holy Spirit showing up and empowering us to get it done. And now we got the right team in place. We have the right leadership in place. We're a few days away from being debt-free totally as a ministry. We got the right servants. It's just timing, and God speaks through situations and circumstances, and the timing seems right now for us to be able to be open to what God is speaking. And then, 31 years, they should know by now that I love this congregation, and I'm not trying to do something to get over on them, When I first got here, that would not have been the case. So, you're not trying to get over us. This is something the scriptures speak of and what we need for the body of Christ here.
Yeah, you haven't given a date. So what is the projected date for the sabbatical?
If I do what I'm supposed to do, I believe I'm gonna give the months because I remember the exact. June 2021, then we're coming back right before Christmas 2021. So we got a whole year. In 2020, it's all celebration.
Right.
100 years of ministry, all the things this church has been able to do. Long before I got here, this church has done some powerful, amazing, incredible things led by God's Spirit with great Christian leadership. And then the amazing things that have happened over the past few years. And so next year, it's all celebration. From all the preaching, all the teaching, all the music, all our guests. everything is celebrating what Eastern Star Church has been able to do for 100 years. And so coming out of that celebration, that's when it's going to be time for restoration.
Yes.
So we'll prepare our hearts and minds from January to June, preparing, getting our mind set for this, getting ready for it. What does this look like? What does it take? And then in June, I'll jump on a plane, head to a mountain somewhere, spend time with, climb mountains and run a marathon and whatever else I feel like I need to be doing. I want to go somewhere, and I'm definitely going to end up in Israel. And the last time I went to Israel, I got a chance to work on preaching every day. So it was like 11 days, and I'm in class every day learning how to preach. And then seeing where Jesus walked and seeing what Jesus saw, and then learning what that was all about. So that was such a blessing to me and my wife. And so just doing some things like that, some stuff that's on my bookshelf that I bought and never read. So maybe I get a chance to at least glance over some of those things.
So if, because a lot of congregation knows you, and this part of you they may not know, what is it that you like to do that just gives you pure joy? Now,
I don't know if they know.
I ain't talking about preaching, reading the Bible.
Yes, preaching, reading the Bible does.
I know, you know what I'm talking about.
I like being in the mountains. I'm not sure what that's about. But I like climbing mountains. I like running. And my wife and I, we've cruised almost every year for 20 years. Yeah. So we like getting on a boat in the middle of nowhere, spending time with each other. I like being by myself. And I think the congregation does know that. And so does my family. I don't know what I like being alone. I like, and I guess that gives me time to spend time with God, and to say what I want to say and talk out loud.
And I asked that question because one of the goals of Sabbatical, to ask a question: what is it that gives a person, a pastor, or gives yourself pure joy? And oftentimes we're so busy working, ministering, teaching, preaching that we lose the things that give us joy. Yeah. And when we have the chance to reconnect with the things that give us joy, the benefit flows right back to teaching and preaching the word, to ministry. So
and it does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I want to read a statement. I've read this to you before, so and I want to get your so let me give the listeners just a little bit of background. One of the parts and pieces of my ministry is this whole talking with a bunch of pastors about sabbatical. And you know the story, so I won't take you through it, but basically I ended up leaving a church, and I think a sabbatical would have helped me stay. So because I made that mistake, and we always can turn mistakes into ministry, I have a ministry to pastors. And you know of this, and you've seen it. And so I was talking to a pastor who had lost their child, and it was sudden, and it was they had caught a cold. The daughter had caught a cold, and it got complicated. And by Monday, this was Friday, and by Monday, she passed. So I was talking to him about this, and just kind of a check-in, and he was saying that he had taken a month off from the ministry, and I thought that maybe more time. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do, but just suggesting. And I started talking to him about sabbatical. And he said, you know what? One of my members just sent me a message. And he read to me the message. And I thought of you when I heard the message. Well, I'm talking to him, and of course it applies to him. So I asked him, could I share the message with you? Which he did. So it says, your legacy is written in the gold pavements approaching the mansion of God. Your health is my concern. I've said it to you before, and I'll say it again. You need to seriously take a long sabbatical if you're going to continually pastor this church. The demands of your presence is creating a health risk. Your life is far more precious to me than your pastoring position. I am positive that I am not alone in this emotion-based opinion. You have sacrificed. you have devoted, you have given. You have exceeded even your own expectations. Your impact on this church and nation is legacy. This is not an almost there thing. You've accomplished it. Therefore, this advice is from the older and the wiser. This is advice from someone who loves you from the depths of his heart. This is advice for one whose concern is your immediate family that needs you healthy. You have put in 1,000 years of work. You have put in 3 campuses, multiple services, Spanish, even preaching in Spanish. The Rock, and you have put in 1,000 years of work. And I just want to get, we've talked about this, so what's your response to that when that's read to you as both joy, affirmation, celebration, and also, man, get some rest? So,
well, I don't remember the source, but I was reading something on church growth and ministry and all that. And the expert was saying how on a Sunday morning, a 2-hour worship service, where the minister is the worship leader and doing the preaching, it's like an 8-hour work day.
Yeah.
And that was with white pastors. So that's an 8-hour work day for them. I can only imagine with the energy that we put into it and the physical effort, what it is to us. And there have been times that I have preached 5 services on Sunday in 3 different locations, and then teach at each location during the week, plus funerals, weddings, meetings, and preparing leaders, and the institutes that we've had here, and just so many things. And then doing revivals across the country and conferences as one of the speakers across the nation and world.
Yep.
And so if a 2-hour work period is more like an 8-hour piece, then I don't know what those numbers look like, but I've been doing that. I've been preaching since I was 17. I got to this church when I was 24. I turned 25 the next month. And I started getting on the road when I was 31. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of time and energy and effort. And that's just when people see us. They don't know what it takes to write a sermon, or to prepare for a lesson, or to prepare for a meeting. They have no idea. They just think we just get up there and just start coming. Yeah.
The Holy Spirit gives it to you.
He does give it to it. It just ain't then.
Oh, with preparation.
So with all of those hours, I don't even know how to document those. If we did that, what would that look like?
So how many sermons do you think you've preached since you were 17?
Oh, geez. I have no idea. I can't
5,000?
I can't even, if let's say if it's 45 times a year.
Right.
Times for average 3 times a Sunday.
Right.
Whatever that number is, that's just here.
Right.
That's not counting during the week here. All the revivals. So I might be gone
thousands
20, 30 times a year, flying. They don't even know I'm gone. I fly out, preach a couple times, fly back, then I do it again and again. So I can't even put a number on that. I'm with the Book of Revelation. It's a number no man can number. So, but it's a lot, and but it's when I'm standing in front of the judgment seat of Christ. That's what He called me to do. So at least I didn't waste my time doing everything but what I've been put on this planet. I know I'm here to preach. Yeah. It's the other things that I'm doing that I might have needed to pull away from, where people try to dictate what the pastor ought to be doing rather than Scripture. Mm-hmm. So to hold a congregation together, what does that look like? But it's actually, I celebrate all of that, but it's still, it wears on you. And one thing I learned is probably too late, that when we preach and teach, and that adrenaline is flowing in us, and then it comes back down, it affects your internal organs. I didn't learn that till later. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons I don't do 5 services on Sunday anymore. Right. So each time I'm preaching and teaching and that adrenaline is flowing and I come back down, what that's doing to me. And so I try to eat halfway right. I try to, even though I haven't run in the last week, I try to run 25, 30 miles a week just to to make sure I'm doing physically what needs to be done. But the wear and the tear for an old man is there, you know. And one thing amazes me about all of this, though, is pastors who did this for 60, 70, 80 years, how did they do that? I'm not sure. With no sabbatical,
Right,
with no
right,
break. They ain't even take vacation. At least I take a vacation. They ain't even take vacations. And I'm amazed at the strength after 50, 60 years of pastoring and preaching. And they were still going at it. So, but I'm glad that we're in a season now that we know the importance of Sabbath.
I want to see, just to pull the curtain back a little, because you know, a lot of congregational members, this may for many of them be the first time, unless you live with a pastor or you were raised in a pastoral family, you really don't know the kind of intricacies and things that go on. So what is your Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening like after you've preached three services?
It used to be, I go out and watch some football. Now I'm in the bed sleep. So age has caught up with me. It takes me about 2 days to recover. You know, and sometimes the way, like when I was doing 5 and 6 services on Sunday, and then, you know, Black church, we got afternoon programs, and somebody, can you come do a Sunday night doc and all that.
Yeah,
so Monday is bring your choir
for A and B selection.
Yeah, there's more people in the choir than out in the car. Anyway, so sometimes I can't even get out of bed on Mondays. And there have been times that Mondays have really been down. And one thing, and I've shared this with my wife, I feel sorry for people who feel that every day. That every day of their life is being that low.
Yeah.
And they can't, and at least for me, by Tuesday evening, you know, I'm back. But I've learned through the years of how to take care of myself. I learned how to pull back. I learned how to, you know, when I went through that bout of cancer, you know, and I survived. God is Jehovah Rapha, he's got it. But if I had died, they would have had to go without me anyway. Yeah. So I think they can miss a meeting without me, you know. So I've learned how to pull back from certain things after that. That was in 2008. So, but it's rough, man. I try to at least get home and eat and fall asleep. And I don't do a lot of afternoon things anymore.
So I think, you know,
and then watch a game. Watch some football or basketball when it's over to try to get myself together. But yeah.
With Lady Sharon and in particular in the family, how do you think they're going to respond during this sabbatical?
I mean, I don't know. You got to bring her in and sit her down and she'll talk about me.
What is she saying to you about it?
No, you know, my family, they care about me. They're concerned. And my mom is still with us. And they talk about the need for me to get a break and to stop going and to stop doing it. And they know I'm not going to, but you can't not say it. Right, so they said that. I think that my wife is probably wondering, am I still going to do it? Am I going to stay away for 6 months? And am I going to do what's necessary to get the rest during the 6 months? So that's probably what she's thinking about. And I am.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. I believe it.
And you know, another thing in those, and you know this as a pastor, and I'm glad God has you in Indianapolis at Christian Theological Seminary, not just for the PhD program for Black preaching, but to have somebody who has pastored major congregations and can identify with it, and to be able to come alongside us and help us to walk through this. But just the emotional roller coaster that pastors are on, people have no idea. So in the course of a Sunday, one person walks up, hey pastor, I'm so excited, I'm getting ready to get married, man, I finally found, okay, well praise the Lord. And the next person walk up, you know, my grandbaby's sick, and so you got to come down and, you know, cry with them. And you went up here to celebrate with them, and after that, somebody goes, oh, pastor, we got our first house. We didn't think we were gonna get it, and it came through. So you get excited with them. Then before you can get to the door, my son just got locked up, pastor. And this goes on every day.
Yeah.
And to try to be sensitive to where people are, and that's why, you know, somebody asked me. One of our ministers in training asked me the other day about so many pastors in depression. Well, if you keep doing that, that will depress you, you know, up and down and hurt people crying. And so throw all that in there, then the need to step back and to get in the presence of God, to hear God's voice, and to get the rest that I need. And you know, Bishop Paul S. Morton used to say about going to preach somewhere else and not being at your church. He said, listen, sometimes you need to get away because you're sick of your people. Just instead of being sick of them, get away. And then other times they sick of you, so you get away. So for everybody who's sick of me for these 31 years, I will get away, come back, and maybe we can reconnect and get restored and renewed, and then do God's business at a higher level. I think some of our staff is thinking I'm gonna come back with 20 more ideas, which is, I hope not, but I'm gonna hear God's voice. I hope I come back with 20 ideas on how to solidify and strengthen. You know, Paul went back and established the churches. You know, he didn't always go and plant churches. He went back and strengthened the ones he had already planted. So hopefully that's what I'll come back with, and with my individual members and families getting rest, and the staff and leaders getting rest, and my family and I getting rest. We ought to be a decent congregation by then.
I think you will. I think you will. You've done a fabulous job.
Only 1,000 years.
1,000 years you've done it. You know, God was
I
saying,
appreciate you.
well done, good and faithful servant.
Thanks a lot, Pastor. Appreciate you.